Coming up on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, and I talk with three amazing people. We talk about Tesla in the sights of NHTSA. We talk about OnlyFans saying no and then yes to porn. We talk about beta testing code that codes itself, basically creates itself. And I go hands-on with the new Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, or wrists-on, however you want to say it. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 198, recorded Thursday, August 26th, 2021. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by PlexTrack, the powerful yet simple security management platform that helps you to get the real cybersecurity work done. With PlexTrack, you'll streamline your assessments, analytics, and reporting. Visit plextrack.com/twit and claim your free month. And by Udacity. Gain in-demand tech skills in as little as 3 months with Udacity's part-time online tech courses. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with code TWIT75. Limited time offer. And by Casper. When it comes to a better night's sleep, Casper's new cooling collection has you covered. Focus on tomorrow. Let Casper handle the rest. Explore Casper products, mattresses, sheets, pillows, and more at casper.com/twit1 and use code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. Hello, welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to people who are making and breaking the tech news. I'm Jason Howell, and I say we there because I'm so used to saying we, because usually Micah Sargent, my co-host, is here. But Micah's out this week, and I applaud him because he needs to take some PTO time. Everybody needs a little break, and so I'm happy to fill in for him. Actually, a little bit later today, I'm going to be filling in for him on Smart Tech Today, too. So you should check that out, twit.tv/STT. Going to do this show a little bit different, at least here in the beginning. I actually recorded an interview yesterday with our first guest, Sam Abuelsamid, and we talked a little bit about the safety of autopilot systems on Tesla's vehicles. Sam couldn't make it today for recording time, so we're going to go ahead and play you that interview right now. So Tesla and Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, the company and he have long touted in so many words the ability for Tesla vehicles to drive themselves in a mode we've talked about many times on this show called autopilot. Many incidents, however, have proven that the mode isn't quite the auto driving machine that some people actually believe it is. And that's drivers that are driving these vehicles put a lot of trust into this mode, thinking it's something that ultimately, leads to an accident or worse. Now the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, is getting involved. And joining me to talk about what that might actually lead to is Sam Abuelsamid, who wrote an article, fantastic article about all the details here for Forbes, as well as being the host of the Wheel Bearings podcast. Welcome back, Sam.
Hey, great to be back with you, Jason. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. And it is great to have you on to talk about this, as it always is. And like I said, I loved your piece. I thought it was super comprehensive. So I'm happy to get you on right now to kind of talk about what this actually might mean. Now, like I mentioned, accidents resulting from the use or even just kind of the overt trust of the autopilot system, that's nothing new. We've been hearing this kind of headline, pop up here and there for the past, few years, 5 years, I think is what you said in your piece. So why has it taken NHTSA this long to actually get involved? Because you mentioned in the article that they've stayed relatively quiet. Why now?
It's a good question as to why they haven't done anything over the past several years. Certainly, during the course of the prior administration in Washington, there was very much from the top of the heap, there was an attitude that government should not be regulating anything. And so I can certainly see why under Elaine Chao as transportation secretary, they didn't do anything. But they didn't really do anything under the Obama administration about Tesla either. So I think what we're starting to see now is the rate of accidents, the rate of crashes seems to be increasing, and Tesla is pushing this technology further and further with their full self-driving beta that they've got out there with a couple of thousand customers now, and that is, I think a lot of people are seeing that as really problematic. And so what NHTSA is looking at right now is a specific group of accidents, a specific group of crashes, where Tesla vehicles that were operating in autopilot crashed into emergency vehicles. NHTSA's got about 30 some odd open investigations into autopilot right now, but they're specifically looking at 11 cases where vehicles ran into either fire trucks or police vehicles or ambulances while they were stopped on the side of the road dealing with some other issue.
Oh, wow. That's pretty serious stuff right there. So that's not even counting. I believe you opened your article talking about a gentleman who was driving and the top of the car was completely lopped off because he went underneath a tractor trailer or something like that. And I totally remember that story from like 4 or 5 years ago. That's not even including situations like that. So we're talking a much larger pool of accidents that would stand, I suppose, to benefit from this investigation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in late June, early July, NHTSA actually issued an order for the first time to all automakers and all of the companies that are developing automated driving systems that they now have to start reporting any crashes that happen with any vehicle that has what's known as a level 2 system or above. So level 2 is what autopilot is. That means this is the Society of Automotive Engineers automation levels. And level 2 is a vehicle that has the ability to control speed and direction, so steering, braking, and acceleration, but still requires the driver to supervise at all times, at least keep their eyes on the road and be ready to take full control at any moment. Then level 3 means the driver doesn't have to watch the road continuously, but still has to be able to take over under certain conditions. Level 4 is where you start to get into the robo-taxi type of thing, where there's no human supervision required. But all the systems we have in production today, whether it's Tesla Autopilot, GM Super Cruise, Ford's upcoming Blue Cruise, and several other systems, are all level 2. So the driver has to remain alert. And this is one of the concerns, is when you start to have these systems that start to work well most of the time. Humans are actually not very good at supervising automation, keeping an eye on things, until something goes wrong. The problem is when something goes wrong in a car, it's usually too late. And so, one of the problems with Tesla vehicles is that they don't have a robust driver monitor system to make sure the driver continues to watch the road. Other manufacturers like GM, Ford, BMW, Nissan are putting in infrared cameras that watch the driver to make sure the driver is actually watching the road at all times. And so NHTSA, is demanding data from manufacturers about these kinds of crashes. And I think that what we're probably going to hopefully end up seeing out of this particular investigation into the crashes into emergency vehicles is the beginnings of some regulation for all of these systems.
And that's the kind of teeth that an organization like NHTSA actually has. That was one of my questions was like, how much can they actually enact? Some of these organizations within the government, it's kind of like, oh, we could take a look and we could strongly recommend, but we don't have the teeth to really make you do something about it. It sounds like NHTSA has the teeth to do that.
Yeah. So when it comes to transportation, there's 2 agencies within the government that are particularly relevant. One is the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board. And you referenced a crash in 2016 of Joshua Brown that sliced the top off the car. That one and several other crashes, Tesla crashes, have been investigated by both NTSB and NHTSA. NTSB is just an investigatory agency. They have no regulatory or enforcement authority. So they can't set rules and they can't fine anybody or make anybody do anything. But they can make recommendations to agencies like NHTSA or the FAA or other agencies that do have that enforcement authority. And NHTSA has that authority. They set federal motor vehicle safety standards and other regulations that govern ground transportation. And so NHTSA could conceivably and hopefully will start to do some regulation and some enforcement as a result of this investigation.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's meaningful. Now, you had mentioned just a few minutes ago that there are other manufacturers who are creating systems similar. I mean, maybe they're not, exactly the same as far as what the company promises that the technology can do, but similar at least from an auto driving standpoint to what Tesla has done with the autopilot. Are they also like? I realize that all manufacturers would probably be held to whatever standard or whatever rules and regulations NHTSA sets out. But is Tesla being kind of called out as the prime example of a company that's making this technology and maybe implementing it in an unsatisfactory way or in an unsafe way? Are other manufacturers being in the spotlight there as well?
No, other manufacturers in general are taking a more cautious approach to deploying this kind of technology. So I'll use GM as an example. They launched their Super Cruise system in 2017, which is a hands-free driving assist system. It's also level 2. Tesla's system, autopilot, is specifically designed to be a hands-on system. And it tells you right in the instructions when you enable it, if you look in the manual, it tells you, when you use autopilot, you have to keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel. The problem is that Tesla, and particularly their CEO, Elon Musk, has gone out there repeatedly over the last 6 years now, talking about how this hardware is going to evolve with just software updates to become a fully autonomous system. And the fact is that's just not true. It's not going to happen. It will get more capable, and it has gotten more capable over the years. But within the scope of what it's able to do now, one of the problems with Tesla is they don't put any limitations on where you can use it. It says in the instructions, only use this on divided highways, but they don't do anything to actually enforce that. They don't really have a good mechanism to enforce hands on the wheel. They just use a torque sensor, which isn't very reliable. And they don't monitor where the driver's looking. GM, as the counterexample, has capacitive sensors in the steering wheel. So when it tells you to put your hands on the wheel, it knows when your hands are on the wheel. If your hands aren't touching the wheel, it knows that. And it also uses an infrared camera that can see through dark sunglasses and at night. So it knows, it looks for where your head position is and your eye gaze to see if you're looking at the road. And then they also use high definition maps to geofence where you can use it. So it won't even activate unless you're on a divided highway. So GM has taken a much more, it's capable of doing some things that autopilot can't do. But there's certain things that autopilot is able to do that Super Cruise can't, because GM has imposed these constraints on it to try to make the system safer. And other manufacturers are following the same pattern as GM with using the infrared cameras and the HD maps for geofencing. So between Elon Musk going out there and doing demos on 60 Minutes, where he's sitting there in the driver's seat going down the highway with Leslie Stahl, looking over at her with his hands not on the wheel, and at the same time, Tesla says, no, you have to keep your hands on the wheel, but the CEO is not doing it. It's no wonder that a lot of Tesla owners, or a significant number of Tesla owners, are going out and doing what they see Elon doing. They think, well, if it's good enough for Elon, I can do it.
Absolutely. And there's nothing standing in their way necessarily. It feels like kind of a bit of willful negligence as far as that's concerned. And I mean, one interesting kind of side note on this is just last week, folks have probably already heard about Elon Musk's event where he showed off, he didn't really show off a humanoid robot. He showed off a human dressed as a robot, but talked about humanoid robots. Cynics might argue, and I heard this earlier on I believe it was This Week in Google just earlier today, might argue that the event was possibly meant as a distraction away from the NHTSA stuff that's happening right now. What are your thoughts there?
I think that is very likely the case. If it wasn't, this was actually scheduled. This event was scheduled before the NHTSA investigation was announced. But we didn't know anything about the humanoid robot. It's possible that the robot thing, the whole Tesla bot thing, was added at the last minute, as part of that distraction, because they knew that out of all the things they talked about in that event, that's the element that was going to get the most attention. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they specifically threw that in there just to distract attention away from the other issues.
Yeah, kind of feels that way. Well, Sam, it's always a pleasure to get the chance to talk to you about anything, but especially Tesla, because you're so knowledgeable about all this stuff. That's why I love bringing you on the show. Sam Abuelsamid, of course, Wheel Bearings podcast at wheelbearings.media. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
They can find me at the company that employs me, Guidehouse Insights, where I'm a principal analyst leading our e-mobility ecosystems research. At guidehouseinsights.com. You can find me on Twitter and of course, at wheelbearings.media.
Right on. Sam, thank you again for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jason.
Now we're in the present time. Sam is amazing. So happy you carved out some time yesterday to join us and that we could bring you that interview. Okay, up next, OnlyFans banned adult content, porn, whatever you want to call it. But then apparently they had some regrets. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with Anna Kramer from Protocol. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by PlexTrack, the security management platform that brings you better reports. It brings you deeper assessments and a whole lot more insights. If you spend hours upon hours reporting security issues, and you feel like it's getting you nowhere, you need a solution for that, right? Maybe you're buried in data. You still can't get a full picture of your security posture because you want to prioritize your remediation efforts. Well, that's what PlexTrack is all about. PlexTrack empowers continuous assessment, also automated workflow, effective collaboration between teams, all in an effort to help cybersecurity professionals do more in less time. So you can create assessments, reports, in half the time, centralize your remediation efforts across all scans, assessments, audits through powerful risk visualizations, also scanner and ticketing integrations, enhanced analytics to effectively communicate risks, all in real time. Now, whether red or blue, there is a PlexTrack for every security professional that will allow you to save time and get the right work done. Red teams can import findings from numerous vulnerability scanners that can include screenshots and videos with auto formatting, create customized templates and export to Word with one click, streamline the report writing process to deliver better reports faster. That's the key here. Everything happens so much faster, so you're not wasting time. Blue teams, they can customize internal and external assessment questionnaires, synchronize findings with task management tools that you know of, that you use, like Jira Cloud is one example, assign findings to team members, and then track status over time. Can also provide attestation of security posture with robust analytics. Try it for free. PlexTrack is free for 1 month, and you can see how it can change your life as a security professional. Simply go to plextrack.com/twit and claim your free month there. That's plextrac.com/TWIT. You know that one, twit. And we thank PlexTrack for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so it goes to show just how quickly news changes from one extreme to the other. Earlier this week, I had booked our next guest to talk about the fallout from the OnlyFans porn ban. And now, as of yesterday, the company has since reversed its decision. That doesn't mean anything about the situation is back to normal, or the way it was anyways. Anna Kramer has been covering this story for Protocol and joins me now. Welcome to the show, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to get you here. Thank you for carving out a few minutes with us today.
Yeah, I'm psyched to talk about this.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm sure this has happened many times, but it's such a fresh example of how swiftly the uprising around a decision that a company like OnlyFans makes can actually influence change in the company. Some might argue for better or for worse. I don't know, but we're not going to place that judgment there. But let's start at the beginning here and talk a little bit about this from the ground up. For those who don't know what OnlyFans is, maybe explain what OnlyFans is, why the company initially moved to rid itself of this explicit sexual content, and especially in light of the fact that it really seems to be largely the bread and butter of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the very heart of it, OnlyFans was created to be a creator platform, a place where people can share their content and have subscribers pay for it. But OnlyFans, because it allowed porn in its original inception, quickly became a porn site. The majority of its creators either distribute porn itself or not safe for work, sexually explicit content in various ways. And kind of in the general zeitgeist, OnlyFans is a place where you go to pay for porn, and where you pay for specific creators to provide that for you, even if that wasn't necessarily the general intent of the site when it was first created.
Right. Oftentimes, as we've seen with services and platforms and stuff, the users end up making that decision for them. Now, we heard definitely a lot of problems over the last week, or a lot of the thought around the reason why this ban took place in the beginning had to do with payment processors. That might have led to this anyways. Now that OnlyFans has reversed its course, does that still seem to be the case, or was there something different going on that we know of?
Well, so there's a big debate here, right? Because OnlyFans, when they first announced the porn ban, they basically said, in order to support our creators, we have to remove sexually explicit conduct because our financial partnerships will not allow us to both provide porn and successfully pay everybody. And whether or not that was true immediately became a question of debate, because a lot of the creators I spoke with were starting to wonder if maybe it's really just because OnlyFans wants to become a more mainstream place, and investors like venture capitalists might not be willing to share their financial capital with a place that provides porn. So there's been a lot of debate about whether really what this is about is OnlyFans is trying to make a play for growth, and they can't do that as long as they provide porn. And the fact that payment processors have made interesting choices around what kind of sexually explicit conduct they let people pay for is kind of like a good excuse. And my theory after the last week of this is that it's probably a combination of the two. Basically what happened is that OnlyFans, 5 days after they first announced the ban, say, oh, we've secured agreements with our payment providers that now we don't have to ban porn. Which to the porn providers I talked to and to the creators I talked to seems to prove their point that, okay, before they ever announced this ban, they could have gone and secured those agreements with payment providers, right? Because they did it now. It's not like anything really dramatic changed in the last 5 days in terms of what is and isn't allowed anywhere.
Right.
Right. And so to a lot of people, that seems to prove the argument that maybe OnlyFans is actually only interested in becoming a more mainstream place where not safe for work content is not the majority of their business. And obviously creators are furious about that.
Yeah, and I guess the question, still stands. Could OnlyFans still be that mainstream place and have porn exist on its platform? And I guess that's the gamble that they're kind of put in the position of making, right? They either go all in on this thing that, as we said earlier, the users of the platform have decided that this is the platform for this. They either go all in there or they do the opposite thing. But the opposite thing really didn't seem to work, because there was a whole lot of uproar. And so it almost damages them more for them to have, well, definitely, in my opinion, damages them more to have gone through what they just went through in order to kind of get to the same place.
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, no. I mean, there's no going back for them from this mistake that they made. It's objectively a mistake. And I think it's very obvious that they did not calculate how popular sex workers are and how much that is the reputation of OnlyFans, to the point where creators who have nothing to do with sex work or with not safe for work content are absolutely furious and allying themselves with them because they see themselves as part of a bigger community. Right. And it's obvious that OnlyFans didn't understand the strength of that community or the strength of the internet pushback that would occur when those people express their frustration.
Absolutely. And that ties right into your first article, which was my initial reason for inviting you on. And then everything went upside down. I was like, all right, this is going to be a great interview. You first wrote in light of the fact that the porn ban was in place, and that was our reality at that moment, about this kind of moving away from OnlyFans on behalf of sex workers, or at least sex workers who are using the platform were put into a position where they have to question, okay, what now? Because this has been my place and now it's not. Both from a perspective of how do I support my life and my business, but also I don't know that I identify OnlyFans as a network that has my back anymore. So now, like, where were they looking to jump to? And I guess the broader question is, now that things have changed, like, are they likely to come back? Because it's like their hand has already been bitten.
It's a really complicated answer, to be honest. I think, I've talked to a lot of sex workers since the reversal as well, because I've done some additional reporting. And basically where we stand now is that anybody who can afford to leave the platform probably wants out and is going to continue to leave whatever they were doing before, right? And there's a lot of porn platforms that are trying to take advantage of this and to attract those sex workers and to say, we have your back because we're porn-only content, right? But the issue here is that if you depend financially on the income that you get from OnlyFans, the fact that OnlyFans will now allow some porn makes it a much higher risk to leave, because the attraction of OnlyFans is that you have a loyal subscriber base. And when there was going to be no porn at all left on the platform, it would be very easy to persuade your subscribers to follow you wherever you go, right? But now that OnlyFans is going to allow porn, even if you want to leave because you feel like the company has betrayed you, or you've been wanting to leave for a long time and this was the straw that broke the camel's back, if your subscribers are going to stay on the site because there's other porn available, then you have a real issue financially because you can't get these people to follow you. And so I think for people whose livelihoods depend on this, and there's a lot of people who fit that category, it becomes really difficult because you suddenly feel like you might have to stay, even if you don't want to stay. And so what we're seeing now is that OnlyFans probably will not lose all of its sex work now that they're going to allow it, because as long as there's a subscriber demand for porn on the platform, it's very hard to just leave behind your clients, if that makes sense. And so, but the issue here obviously is that they feel betrayed. And there's been kind of a long history over the last year or so of sex workers fighting the platform sort of more quietly and blaming the platform for not protecting them. And so you can kind of see this as just another thing in the ledger that in the long run adds up to a really serious issue, because it means that the relationship between the content creators that bring in the money and the company continues to deteriorate.
Yeah, indeed. And I wonder if at some point there's maybe on the behalf of OnlyFans, maybe some efforts to make amends in that regard, right? Because they're going to have to do some serious damage control at this point. You know, are they willing to then come out on the other side and say, hey, you know what, we totally screwed up here. We do appreciate you, and here's how we show it. Like, I'm not sure whether they will or not, but what do you think?
I mean, people are really upset that there's very little explanation from the company for what happened. And they continue to make it worse for themselves. Everybody I talk to is consistently sort of horrified by the total lack of explanation they give to their creators and their total unwillingness to comment on what happened, not just to reporters, but to the people who bring in the money for them. And, you know, and the longer they wait to do that, the worse it gets. And so I really wonder, I don't know what it would take. I don't know if anything would really succeed in changing people's minds. I think it's more of a financial relationship now than it is one of loyalty, unfortunately, for them.
Man, that's interesting too, because then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe like if they were gonna push all their chips into the table and be like, no more sexual content, you know, sexually explicit content, we want to go mainstream. Like, it's impossible to know now if they had stuck to that what the 5-year view would be. You know, 5 years down the line, is OnlyFans like the number 1 or the number 2 platform for mainstream content? Who the heck knows? But now they reversed it. It's just a messy situation. There's no going back. Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating story and a fascinating topic, and I'm super happy to have you on and that you had the time to share with me today. So thank you so much for coming on with me. Anna Kramer writes for Protocol.com. If people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter. Anna_C_Kramer is probably the best place. You can always shoot me an email. And then, of course, all my stuff is on protocol.com. I work for our workplace section. We have a weekly newsletter that I write for sometimes. So obviously you could sign up or subscribe for that. And I think that's everywhere.
Right on. Well, thank you again, Anna. It was nice talking with you.
It was great talking to you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk with you soon. All right. We are indeed living in the future. Up next, code that writes itself. Yes, it exists. And actually, apparently, it does a pretty darn good job of it, too. It's code inception. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. But first, This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Udacity. Udacity is all about learning. I love Udacity and what they offer, because if you want to grow your tech skills, you want to learn a new facet of technology knowledge, Udacity is a great place to go. It offers a unique part-time online education program that's geared for those of you who are looking to take your tech knowledge to the next level. They have specialized and just exciting content all around. Some of these topics, some of these courses, you're like, whoa, that's totally the future. Flying cars, like you can learn about, kind of designing flying. It's kind of crazy. Udacity offers the latest cutting edge nano-degree programs, many of which are not available anywhere else. So, AI, deep learning, like I said, flying car and autonomous flight engineer. Yes, if you're interested in that, go ahead and search that string. Intro to self-driving cars, machine learning engineer, robotics software engineer. It's like the future here that you can learn about. To create the course content, Udacity actually partners with the leaders of the industry. So, of course, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon's AWS, and they're selecting the leads of these teams at these companies to be the instructors. So you're learning from people who not only love this, but live it. And those are the right people to learn from, let me tell you. Udacity is for you. They can help you master the latest tech skills and techniques. So courses are actually project-based. So you're not a passive viewer of a video. You're actively learning, covers cutting-edge technology, lets you test your knowledge with things like homework and projects that are reviewed by qualified professionals. So you're going to do your work. A real human is going to give you feedback and reviews, and you have access to mentors 24/7. Udacity's flexible schedules also mean that you can put in the amount of hours per week that you have. So 5 hours, 10 hours, fit it in, or wake up a couple hours every morning and have that be your Udacity learning time. Whatever it is, working at your own pace any time of day or night. You can graduate in as little as 3 months. It's really directed by you as far as time is concerned. The World Economic Forum estimates that 75 million jobs are going to be replaced by automated processes within the next 3 years. Udacity prepares its students for the jobs of the future. Over 14 million people in over 240 countries now use Udacity, and it's no surprise. They're awesome. Check out their detailed course listings at udacity.com. And then once you enroll as a student in a specific course offering, you're going to be prompted to view the online course, as well as, like I said, complete a series of projects and support courses. They also happen to have flexible payment options, and you can learn at your own pace and schedule. And if you want to check out their free courses, well, heck, they have them. It's a great way to dip your toes into the water and see what it's all about. And also, it's not just for individuals. It works for enterprise as well. If you have a team that needs to master cutting edge technologies like data science, AI, cybersecurity, what enterprise doesn't need to know something about cybersecurity? With Udacity for Enterprise, you can upskill your entire workforce with real world project-based learning. And they've got it. Be sure to check out the enterprise section of Udacity's website today. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career. Visit udacity.com/twit. You'll get 75% off any program with code TWIT75, and that is a limited time offer. So check it out now. That's udacity.com/twit. And don't forget, enter TWIT75, and you'll get that 75% off. And we thank Udacity for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right. At this point, the idea of an automated workforce is really nothing new. Heck, I was just talking about it like 60 seconds ago. What's interesting to witness, however, is some of the unique places that this concept is cropping up. Take, for example, the work of OpenAI's Codex system that actually programs code so that, in some cases, you don't have to. Maybe not entirely, at least not yet. And this is kind of what these technologies, what's so interesting about them is like, if we're in the baby steps period, what does this grow to? Well, joining us to talk about his experience beta testing the system is Thomas Smith. Wrote about it for Better Programming on Medium, and it's great to have you back on the show, Thomas.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's good to get you back. It's been a little while, so it's nice to see you. So first of all, what is this OpenAI Codex system? I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. So this isn't going to be something, or maybe it will be. I guess if you make a system like this and it's so easily, translates what you want into code, maybe that's the point, that anyone could be be coding what they want. But what are the unique capabilities of this system right now?
I think that's exactly the use case down the line. But at this point, basically, Codex is a system from OpenAI where you can write a description in plain language of a piece of software that you want, and it will actually write the code for that software for you. So I could say, give me a Python program that finds the current weather in San Francisco and then displays it or stores it in a database. A description just like that. And it will actually go and connect to an API. It'll write code to access that. It'll grab that data, it'll display it, and it'll create all of the Python you would need to do that. And it can work in multiple languages. So it can even do web design. You could write a prompt like, make a website for a cat lawyer. And it would write the HTML and the CSS, and it would write a little description of the cat lawyer and render out a website that you could open in a browser and view, like you would something written by a person.
That's fascinating. It's crazy to think that we're at a place where code can actually write code like this. But how were you selected to take part in this beta? Like, was it a large beta test pool, or what? How did that go down?
So I think because these kinds of technologies could be misused relatively easily, OpenAI is really selective about who they let into their beta, and they tend to move pretty slowly. Codex is built on GPT-3, which is another sort of AI system that does something similar, taking in prompts and generating text. And I had beta tested that system pretty extensively. So I was already kind of on their trusted list, I think. And that was one of the reasons I was invited about 4 or 5 days, I think, after Codex launched in private beta to test it out. That said, it's relatively mysterious, so I don't know how big the group of testers is, and it's something where you apply, you explain why you think you want to use it, and you mysteriously get an email. Could be days later, could be months later, giving you access. So I was lucky enough to get to play with it at a pretty early stage, which has been really exciting.
Yeah, indeed. So not only do you get access to play with it, it's also kind of a responsibility, right? Like, and obviously you take your job seriously. You wrote all about kind of your methodologies and everything. But what were your thoughts, and what exactly did you put it through in order to really kind of test the limits of what it can do?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was, how would we compare this to the output from a human coder? And, one thing that people are often asked to do if you're applying for a coding job is to do these kind of code challenges or even whiteboard coding, where you're given almost like the kind of problem you'd find on a computer science midterm or final exam. And you just try to solve it in one go. Sometimes you're not even allowed to use a computer. You're literally writing the code on a whiteboard on these sort of job interviews. So I thought, well, how would the system do in that kind of context? So I went to a website called HackerRank, which provides sort of a database of these kind of coding challenge questions. And a lot of coders use HackerRank to prepare for coding interviews and to sort of test their knowledge. So I grabbed a whole range of different prompts from that website, and I put them into Codex just to see how it would perform. Everything from really simple kind of string substitution types of questions all the way up to really complex regular expressions and the kind of things that you would encounter on a higher level kind of coding interview. And it really passed with flying colors. I mean, it generated code that I could then put back into HackerRank, and it will verify, whether something you wrote is correct or not. And, in most cases, I could plug something into to Codex that would probably take me as a human coder, half an hour to an hour to solve. And in 2 seconds, it would spit out the right answer. I'd put it into HackerRank, and it would verify that it was correct. So really, I called it spooky good in my article. It is really spooky to watch a computer literally type out these often super complex answers and just to do it kind of effortlessly.
That's amazing. And I imagine the more that you work with it then, because you got to have, for an automated system, there's got to be a level of trust if you're ever going to, like say this is a tool in your tool set. you got to trust the system that it's going to give you what you need and not mess something up along the way and make you look bad. Let's say it's creating code for you. At the end of the day, did you feel like it earned your trust as far as being able to pretty consistently give you the output that you were looking for?
So I think at the moment they say it's 37% accurate in terms of generating perfect code. And so sometimes people look at that and say, well, that's not very good, 37%. Yeah. But, as a person and as a coder, I would be shocked if 37% of my code was perfect on the first try. So I think with coding, it's always an iterative process. And you're writing something, you run it, there's a bug, you fix the bug. You run it again, it crashes, you fix that bug, and you sort of work your way towards a solution. So I would sort of hold it to that same standard. And I would say, most of the time, the code that it generates is not perfect on the first try. You still need that kind of human coder coming in and making fixes. So, to your original point, you probably can't sit down as a non-coder at this point and write a prompt and get something perfect. But if you already do code, it can generate a really amazing first draft really quickly. And it can automate a lot of sort of the boring grunt work of coding, I would say. API integrations is a perfect example of that. Generating sample data, to test code and that kind of thing. Utility functions, stuff that's sort of boring, it can do really well. Would I trust it for a mission critical application at this point? I don't think anyone should trust AI for those kinds of applications right out of the box. But what it gives you is code to start from. And then as a human developer, you can go in and tweak that and iterate on it and fix it and ultimately end up with something that's really workable and that you can trust way, way faster than if you just sat down to write it yourself from scratch.
So kind of listening to you kind of walk through that, being a non-coder, I've like hardly, back in the Commodore 64 days, I coded many a basic program. That's about where my programming knowledge ended. But what about familiarity with code? If you're a developer and you're creating something and you're coding all day, you have an inherent exposure to what you put in because it's all coming from you. And so maybe you get later down the process, tell me if any of this is incorrect. You get later down the process and instinctively what might or might not be causing that because you were the one that kind of, it was your brain that put all the stuff into the code. When you have an agent like this acting on your behalf, does that mess with kind of your own knowledge to take what was already done and kind of know what to do down the line based on the code that was written by it and by you?
I think that's a great question. Yeah. And I think, a lot of coders talk about getting into almost like a flow state, where you're sort of in the moment and just sort of writing and you can almost lose yourself in the code. Certainly this process of writing prompts and jumping back and forth can be disruptive to that. On the other hand, I would say realistically, a lot of coders are going out and grabbing chunks of code from existing projects anyway. So especially, if you're working for a company where there's a big existing code base and you have to write a function that does, some particular thing in a new piece of software, you're probably not going to write it from scratch. You're probably going to say, oh, I remember, I wrote this 6 months ago, or a colleague wrote this 6 months ago. And go and grab that chunk. And this sort of almost automates that process and creates code that's sort of like something you would have found in your code base already, but it's writing it from scratch in many cases. And one of the sort of, dirty secrets of software development is that people often go and grab chunks of code from Stack Overflow, from an open source project, tweak it a little bit, work it into their production code base. Shouldn't necessarily be doing that in a lot of cases, but people definitely do. And, that's one of the things where I think OpenAI sees this as being maybe a better alternative because you can, instead of having to go out and grab something from one of those places, this could potentially write it for you and you could put it in. So yeah, is it disruptive if you're creating something really innovative, a new algorithm, a new way to approach things? Probably this wouldn't be the system to use for that at this point. But a lot of coding is just that rote, okay, now I need a function that's going to, write this regular expression to match some data. I'm going to have to sit down and sort of puzzle through this or find it somewhere else and copy and paste it in. And I think this takes a lot of that kind of grunt work, I would say, off of a coder's plate so they can focus more on that kind of much more creative, generative, sort of building new algorithms or coming up with new ideas piece of coding.
Yeah, and that strikes me. I mean, as a creative individual, not with coding, but with other things, that strikes me as something that would be incredibly useful and beneficial to be able to be like, at least now I can focus on the fun stuff and I don't have to like go searching for that block of code or whatever. Like that aspect of it does not sound fun to me anyways. You also mentioned in your article about its abilities in describing code. How is that different from what you're talking about right now?
Yeah, so I think to me, that's one of the most exciting aspects of what it can do. So everything I've talked about so far, the process is, literally you describe what you want and it will go out and write that for you. And it's plain text, saying, I want to integrate with this API, and it'll write the code to do that integration. Or I want to get the Bitcoin price for today and display it, in big red letters on the screen. That's something I literally gave it as a prompt and it went ahead and did that. It can actually go the other way, though. So I can take a function that I've written or someone else has written, and I can give that to Codex and say, tell me what this does. And it will actually do that, and it'll write a description in plain text, kind of going exactly the mirror image of what it normally does, and tell me exactly what that function accomplishes. And that's huge for a couple of different reasons. One of them is, oftentimes programmers are asked to come into a project where there's this huge legacy code base, and programmers usually don't like to document stuff really well. We like to be, people like to be coding. So writing documentation is time consuming. People don't do a lot of it. So oftentimes, especially in the open source world, you end up with these giant code bases that have pretty limited documentation. And then, 5 years later, programmers brought in to try to figure out what somebody who's probably moved on, to some other opportunity was thinking when they wrote this code. And it can be really difficult to piece through and do that. So I can see this being really powerful because you can take a function from your legacy code base or from an open source project, put it in, ask Codex what it does, and get an explanation out. And that could be really helpful if you need to document that code or just to understand what the intention was so that you can start to debug it and update it. The other thing where I think this will be super valuable is for people learning to code. Say I'm taking a look at somebody else's program, or I'm a new developer at a company and I'm getting up to speed, and I see some code and I don't really know what it does. I could grab that, put it into Codex and get an explanation. I could even write some code and put it in and say, what is this doing? And if it tells me it's doing something totally different than what I was hoping for it to do, I know maybe I need to change my approach. So I think it'll be really helpful, not only for people who are trying to document or go back and understand older code, but also for people who are just learning to code for the first time, to get almost like a mentor who can sit there and explain what code does in plain language that they can understand, even if they're kind of a novice.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And actually someone in chat room, Loquacious, asked, does it add comments to its code, which is kind of like a combination of both, right? Like it's coding, but it's also analyzing or describing. Does it do that at all? And would that be useful? I'm sure it would be.
Sometimes it does. So that's the interesting thing about these systems is, they're trained on these huge data sets. And so what you get out of it is sometimes totally unpredictable, and it can vary depending on the day or depending on the exact wording of your prompt. So, sometimes you'll write a prompt and it'll give you, beautifully commented code where it will mirror, the style of a talented developer who also is really conscientious and documents their code as they go. Sometimes it'll just spit out something with absolutely no explanation whatsoever. So it can follow and will do so randomly sometimes, different coding styles, which is really interesting to see. What you can do, though, is after the fact, once it's generated code, you can ask it for an explanation and then take that explanation and actually put it into your code base as your own comment. So I think one of the hopes is that, you could skip the kind of tedious step of documenting your code, by writing it, handing it to Codex, taking its explanations, obviously checking them to make sure they're correct, and then putting that back into your own code base as comments so that the developer 5 years down the line, doesn't have to try to figure out from scratch what you were trying to do in there.
Man, that sounds incredibly useful. And I would, again, imagine that writing those comments is probably not the most enjoyable part of the process. As you said, it sounds like a lot of coders just skip that because they want to keep on creating, and I totally get it. Cool stuff. I guess my last question is, you're a beta tester. Does that mean you get to continue using it, continue testing it, or is that like done and now you have to wait for some future product?
No, I mean, one of the things I really appreciate with OpenAI systems is they basically just give beta testers open access to it, and we're able to go in and use it for essentially whatever we want as long as we're being responsible. So I continue to have access to it, and I'm able to use it for my company's own code base. What I probably would actually use it for in the real world now is that task of integrating with APIs. So if you're not a coder, an API is a system that you can use to access usually data from another source. And there's sort of standard ways to connect to them, but writing the code to connect to a given API can get really kind of detail-oriented and technical and time-consuming. And Codex does a great job of automating it. So for example, if I wanted to get the air quality index for my city, Lafayette, California, I could probably go out and find an API and learn how to integrate with it and write some Python code that would do that integration. Or, if I want that data in my program, I could just write a prompt, and I've done this to Codex that says, go to the Air Now API and grab the air quality index for Lafayette. And it'll write all that code for me, and I can put that into my program and have that data immediately available to me. And that's, it's not writing a groundbreaking algorithm. It's not doing anything that I couldn't do as a human programmer, but it's giving me access to a much broader range of data because I don't have to sit down and spend an hour learning the unique setup of that API or even finding it in the first place. I can literally write, one plain text prompt and get all of my integration code spat out for me and just really easily pull that data into my program. So I can see being able to build more external data into my company's software just because it makes it so easy with Codex to do those integrations with other people's platforms.
Fascinating stuff. Thomas, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing your insights after all of that beta testing. Pretty cool that you have access to it, and it seems like you're the right person to do it. You put it through a lot. Thomas Smith, this piece can be found at betterprogramming.pub. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
You can find me on Medium. You can also follow me on Twitter at TomSmith585. Or if you want to see some video examples of all of these kinds of things I've spoken about, you can go to my blog, which is DIYLifeTech.com, or visit the DIY Life Tech YouTube channel to see those videos.
Excellent. Thank you again. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
All right. Bye. All right. Up next, I'm going to show you my latest delivery and a little teaser. It's this right here, the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. I got it yesterday, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a first look there. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Casper. Love your tomorrow with Casper. Why? Because you're going to sleep so good in a Casper that you're going to wake up tomorrow. You're going to be like, yeah, this is good. This is what it feels like to get a good night's sleep. How do I know? I've got a Casper in this room, this studio that also happens to be my bedroom. I've got a Casper mattress in both of my daughter's rooms. We've got Casper pillows on all of our beds. I mean, we are apparently super fans of Casper and happy to be super fans of Casper. And they keep coming out with some really cool bed technology and sleeping technology. The new Casper Cooling Collection has everything you need to help you sleep cool all night long. It is still summer after all, and one of the hottest summers it feels like at times that I've experienced in recent memory. Casper's mattresses with new snow technology, hyperlight sheets, lightweight duvets, and breathable mattress protector are all designed to keep you cool and comfortable. So you can't help but love your tomorrow when you're sleeping on all that Casper. Tomorrow's a new day. Make the most of it with Casper's new cooling collection, Casper's Wave Hybrid Snow Mattress. Just the name makes you feel like that mattress is just cool and comfortable. Keeps you cool for more than 12 hours, pulling heat away from your body for sustained temperature regulation, a cool to the touch feeling, and a much improved tomorrow. Better bedding makes for a better tomorrow, which is why Casper's Hyperlight sheets are designed with an innovative grid weave that actually lets air flow through for maximum breathability. The lightweight duvet provides optimal temperature control without sacrificing plush comfort. Casper's breathable mattress protector improves the coolness of the bed even further. It allows air to flow between your body and the mattress. All of these are designed to work together to prevent overheating all night long, because cooler sleep means better sleep, and better sleep means, you can probably say it by now, better tomorrows. So I bet you're thinking, I want my tomorrow to be better. Well, I'm telling you right now, all you got to do is get yourself some of this Casper mattress action, and you're going to be happy tomorrow. I certainly am. I love sleeping on the Casper mattress. Before, just real quick, before we had a Casper mattress in every room, in every bedroom, my youngest daughter was the last to get it. And she would always come into our bed at night because, she'd fall asleep in her bed and then she'd wake up and then she'd be uncomfortable and she'd come into our bed. And now she has one and she sleeps in her bed all night. So it's pretty great. That's just a testament to how comfortable it is. As always, Casper offers free shipping and free returns. When it comes to a better night's sleep, Casper's new cooling collection has you covered. Focus on tomorrow. Let Casper handle the rest. Explore Casper's products. That's mattresses, sheets, pillows. Don't forget the pillows. They're great. And more at casper.com/twit1. And use code TWIT1. That's TWIT and the number 1. If you do that, you're going to get $100 off select mattresses. That's a big discount. That's code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. Exclusions apply. See Casper.com for more details. And we thank Casper for their support of Tech News Weekly and for their support of our sleep here in the Howell household. It really does make a huge difference, and we appreciate it every single time we lay down on those mattresses. So thank you, Casper. All right. So where are we now? Yesterday, I was, well, not surprised because I had the delivery notification. I knew that it was going to come at some point yesterday, but I was surprised in a happy way when I saw that it was delivered earlier in the day. I was like, oh, I didn't expect it. I got in my hands, or rather on my hand, the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. This is Samsung's latest wearable, and they announced this a couple of weeks ago. It's notable for a number of different reasons. You can see this is the stainless silver version, $350. And I gotta say, it's a sharp looking watch. Just the hardware alone, I feel, is really nice. And I actually ended up going with a 42 millimeter size. Normally, I think when I've been doing smartwatches, I tend to, just go for the largest smartwatch. But this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to go a little bit smaller. Like, it's not like too small. It actually looks like it fits my wrist kind of perfectly. I guess I could see maybe a little bit larger one on my wrist, but I like it. And I feel like the display is large enough, and, it has a nice bit of sharpness to it. This does come with a wireless charger, which maybe for the purposes of this walkthrough, I'm going to go ahead and take the watch off and put it in the charger, at least for now. There we go. So that's the watch. This one right here does not support LTE. You can get the Galaxy Watch in an LTE support. Obviously, you're going to pay a little bit more for that. It has the characteristic rotating bezel, which is something that Samsung has had on its Galaxy Watches. Not all of them. I think the Active, which is the kind of smaller, more fitness-focused one, it's less expensive. It doesn't have the rotating bezel, but the rotating bezel really is just meant to be an easier and kind of in some ways more satisfying way to navigate through these things. I could do it by swiping, or I could do it by grabbing the rotation bezel and doing it that way. So that's pretty nice. You can see it has two side buttons right here. The top one goes home. It also, if you do a double click on that, it goes to your last app. Here, let me get that to center again. There we go. So one button, would take you home. Two buttons, if I did it, would take me to Oh, the Play Store. I was downloading the new YouTube Music app. Let's see here. The bottom button views recent apps. So you can kind of, here, let's go back home. Let's see. Hopefully the demo gods are going to be happy with me. Yeah, maybe that's not working. I know that if I hold this down, it launches Samsung Pay, which I don't have set up. That is one of the downsides, is that I don't believe that, and I'm going to test this and see for sure, but I don't believe that I can load Google Pay on here instead of Samsung Pay. And I don't believe that I can have Google Assistant on here instead of Bixby, which I'm never going to use Bixby, but I always use Google Assistant. So, and this has happened in smartwatches past. Samsung has done that, and then they have, or rather, they've done this on their phones in the past, where there was like a button, a hardware button that was for Bixby, and eventually they acquiesced and gave the option to transition that over into an assistant button. Second that happens on the watch, I'm gonna use that. So for sure, I'm looking forward to that. IP68 certified, so dust, dirt, sand. 30 minutes under 1.5 meters of water submersion. So definitely meant for the elements. The display is really sharp. It's a really nice looking display, I have to say. 450 by 450 pixels of resolution. And there's some of these watch faces that at times, like, I get this like 3D effect. Like, it's sharp enough that these tiny little, the arms, the red arm that's moving and everything, kind of gives me the 3D effect that it's an actual watch, depending on how I look at it. 361 milliamp hour battery on here as well. And Samsung is touting, I think, a 2-day battery out of this. I will say yesterday when I got it delivered, it had 40% of battery shipping. That's what it shipped with. And I threw on, ambient mode. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but ambient mode lets the watch kind of it kind of shuts off all the white pixels and makes it more of like a passive, always on viewing of the time, because I like to have that always there. So I put that on. I also set the display up to full brightness because I was sitting in my other office, aka the hammock that's out in our backyard, and so it was really bright outside. And by, I'd say, about 7:30, I was getting the low battery warning. So I don't know what that means for full day use, but I'm going to give it some time and see. Now, this is the first wearable running Wear OS 3.0. This is the first time Samsung has used Wear OS on its watches instead of Tizen. So basically what you're getting here is Google and Samsung's combined efforts on Wear OS, which takes some of the good of Tizen, which Samsung was really, has been really confident and rightfully so with their wearables running Tizen, and brings it over to the Wear OS experience. That also means that you get things like Google's apps, you get Google's Maps and the Google Play Store and stuff like that. So that's really great to have. I'm just looking at some of the watch faces. Let's go ahead and select something else and put that on there. And I'm still playing around with Wear OS, but I mean, it has all the typical kind of shortcuts. There's my app drawer, swiping up, swipe down. I get more of my device controls. Swiping left, I get notifications. Swiping right, I can swipe through the different, like activity modes. I can pin anything over here, and notifications from calendar, stuff like that. So it's all accessible. And I think the other big benefit potentially, again, I'm going to test it, is that Wear OS 3.0, it's a new version of Wear OS. Google has really stagnated in ways when it comes to Wear OS. So this was a big announcement because it shows Google like kind of recommitting itself to its wearable efforts. The old Wear OS was slow. It was just outdated. It really felt like, at least to me anyways, not everybody, but it felt to me like Google had kind of forgotten about it, as Google tends to do with certain things. So this is kind of Google recommitting to its Wear OS effort, and that I think is a good thing. Also has a bunch of exercise functionality, which I'm going to test. Sensors for pulse, step counting, ECG for atrial fibrillation, blood oxygen detection. It has blood pressure detection, though that's not active in the US for now. I don't know if it will be, maybe eventually. And then it also has a bioelectric impedance sensor, and this allows you to check your body fat percentage. You move it up on your wrist, and then you, with your other hand, you tap these two buttons, making sure you're not making any connection with that hand and this hand. That's essential. And it'll do the scan and tell you, as far as it's concerned, what your body fat percentage is. So those are things that I don't know that I'm necessarily looking to do all the time. I'm sure someone out there is like, finally, there's a wearable that does this. It does this. It also, they have group challenges on here as well, which I know the Apple Watch has. So I could sync this up with someone else who has the Galaxy Watch 4, and we can kind of challenge each other. I will say, for whatever it's worth, this is the first Android wearable that when my wife saw the box, it was in on the kitchen while I was outside working. She came outside with the box and she said, this is a pretty watch. I want one. It's the first Android wearable that she's ever said that to. So I feel like maybe that's saying something. She tried on this size and it worked for her as well. So it doesn't really feel like a chunky piece of technology as much as it does a watch. And that is a good thing. I am, of course, going to be reviewing this watch on All About Android. I don't know if it's going to hit Hands on Tech after that as well, but definitely All About Android. I know Leo is getting his, I think, tomorrow. So you're going to hear Leo talking about his experience with it as well. I am also very curious to know how comprehensive the feature set is on this watch, because I'm connecting it to a Pixel and not a Samsung phone. And Samsung is very, very up on making their devices kind of the best when they're connected to each other. So I'm sure there's some aspects of this that are just not going to work as well or at all because it's connected to my Pixel and not a Samsung phone. All that remains to be seen, but I'm looking forward to it. And I got to say, I really like the look of this watch. It's nice looking. So that is it for this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Thank you so much for joining me. And I am looking forward to having Micah Sargent back in the virtual chair next Thursday. We do the show every Thursday, twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. Jump out to YouTube, subscribe there, whatever you like. We have the options for you there. If you want all of our shows ad-free, well, all you got to do is check out Club TWiT, $7 per month. And you get access to every TWiT show that we have with no ads. So that's one thing that you get. You also get an exclusive TWiT Plus feed. So if we have extra content, maybe pre and post show content, sometimes we're creating content specifically for the feed. You'll get that in the TWiT Plus feed, and a members only Discord channel, which is just a heck of a lot of fun getting in there, chatting with everybody who are super fans of the network. And there's just a lot of people talking about TWiT and enjoying what we do and chatting with us and us chatting with them. So it's a really great opportunity there. twit.tv/Club TWiT, $7 a month. If you want to tweet at me, I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Big thanks to everyone at the studio who are behind the scenes. You don't get the chance to hear their voices, but John Ashley, Burke, John Slanina, there's just a whole lot of people at the studio making this possible each and every day, and I appreciate them, and I appreciate you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are interested in checking out all things smart home and Internet of Things, then you should check out Smart Tech Today, the podcast I, Micah Sargent, do with my co-host Matthew Casanelli. It's all about the smart home and improving your automations.